Hello folks, welcome back to the kitchen. I'm asking the question this week, can you make a prosciutto with just a very small leg joint from the butcher's? I have one here and it didn't cost a great deal. This was about just over £8, but it was 1.618 kilos and it cost me £8.55. I'm sure you can do the calculation in your own currency. But the whole point about curing a prosciutto is to have lovely cured meats. Now, I asked the question, can you do it with a joint this small? That's a very relevant question because obviously with a whole leg, it makes it just a little bit more inaccessible for most people. This, I think, is a project that you can do at home. So follow through with me on the bench as I take you through the curing process. I'll cover all the details, all the weights and measures and how I'm going to cure it. So without further ado, let's get on the bench and let me take you through it. Right, so here's my joint. Like I said, it is 1.618 kilos in size. Now I'm going to be curing this at the rate of 2% salt, and I've calculated that to be around about 32 and a bit grams of salt. I've got 33 grams in here, it's not so critical. However, we are going to be using Prague powder 2. Now Prague powder 2 needs to be a little bit more accurate, and this comes out at just a fraction over 4 grams. So I've actually weighed out 4.01 grams here.
Okay, if you want to work this out using a calculator, enter 1.618 grams, which is the weight of your meat, and multiply that by 0.0025. And as that's calculated in kilograms, that will actually come out at 4 grams.
And we'll mix these two together. So we're not putting any fancy flavourings in the initial cure. We're going to just let the salt and the Prague to do the business. Mix those up. And the method I'm going to be using for this is very, very simple. It's going to be the EQ method, which is basically using the minimum amount of salt. And because we are making a prosciutto, ordinarily we would put this in would encase this in salt and would let it go for quite a while. We don't need to do this because this is big enough, or small enough I should say, to fit into one of my curing bags. So this is going to go inside here and we'll cure it in the bag. So let's do that. First thing I need to do is take this out of the bag. Now, this was a roasting joint, I'll level with you. So it's been trussed by the butchers. This came out of a supermarket, as I'm sure you can tell from the packaging. And it's obviously been deboned, but we're going to keep it in this shape, and I'm not going to take off this trussing because that is helpful to us. But what I will do is I'll just mop up some of this moisture and take that off. Now when I lift this out, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some left behind, which is okay. We will expect that. I'll get that out of the way, sort that out in a minute. And we'll just take the rest of the moisture off this. Now, like I said, it is, or was, a roasting joint, and as such, they slit the skin. Now, I'm not too worried about that. We are obviously, when we make a prosciutto, we're going to be air drying this, and as a result of these slashes, it should actually assist it in drying. So I'm not getting too het up about that. Not a problem at all. So we don't need to worry ourselves with that. All I need to do is just make sure we get as much moisture off this as possible. And then we can get this into the bag and cure it. I will be maintaining the shape of this whilst it's curing. And I'm not actually going to be piercing this either. So I'm going to be leaving it as it is. sometimes people pierce this. You've seen me do it on other projects where I pierce this to allow the cure in. Don't really think I need to do that on this, so I'm going to let it go for a while. So first thing I need to do is get this into the curing bag. And that's an easy enough thing to do. And then what we'll do is we'll just tip this in. I'll try and get it so that that salt goes over the face and around the sides. I'll put a little bit on the skin surface as well, and that can be done. Right, so you want that salt to come in contact with all this meat everywhere. So what will happen is when we draw a vacuum on this, the salt will be in very close proximity to the meat. The meat will then start to absorb that salt. It will turn it into a brine. It will perfuse through the meat, and it'll also draw out some of the moisture and create, in a sense, its own brine. And we want to do that. We're going to be drying this later on in the process. So what we want is some of that moisture to come out, because that's going to assist the drying process. We also want the curing salt and the salt to go into the meat. This curing salt will preserve the colour. That is quite important. And the salt will obviously cure the meat and give it that nice salty flavour. Not too salty as well, because remember, we are equalisation brining this, or curing it, should I say, to be more accurate. And we don't really need it to be any saltier than 2%, which is perfect for what we're doing. Right, so I just need to draw a vacuum on this. Excuse the noise. And I'll seal it. Right, that's done. Perfect. Today's date is the 19th of Feb 26. So I'll just put 19th of the 2nd 2026. Okay, so how long are we going to cure this for? Well, ideally we would cure this, if we were using any other method for curing, we would say, right, well, the salt's going to penetrate at the rate of ½ an inch a day plus 2 days, just to be safe. So because the salt's coming in from both sides, I would say that's about 5 inches, about 125 mil. So I make that's 10 days plus 2 days, 12 days. But because we're EQing, that's the minimum time you can let it cure for. I'm going to let this go for a couple of weeks. So I'm probably not going to touch this until the beginning of March. And we'll come back to this. And when it's done, we'll carry on with the next stage of the process, which will be getting this drying. In the meantime, this can do its thing in the fridge, and we'll see it when it's ready. Right. I have just taken this out of the fridge. It's been in for a day, and just look at the moisture that is coming out of this piece of ham. Can you see all that? I told you this would start to draw moisture out, creating its own brine, and that is exactly what is curing that. So that is on its way to doing a good thing. You want to be checking this every day, really, just to make sure that it's okay. You've still got a vacuum, the packet's intact, and you can actually give it a little bit of a massage as well, just to help that salt get in there and that brine to do its thing. Right, this can go back in the fridge, and we'll see it tomorrow. Well, you won't, but I will. And you'll see it when it's ready to go through its next process. Right, back to the fridge. Right, here is our prosciutto. It has been in cure since the 19th of February. It is now the 10th of March. So that is 19 days by my calculations, or 2 weeks and 5 days. So we're going to take it out of the bag. Not going to pat it dry too much. I'll take off any excess moisture, but then I'm going to give it a coating of some black pepper. Once I've done that, it's going into a dry aging bag. We're going to pull a vacuum. That's going to sit on a rack, and we are going to get this back into the fridge to air dry for, well, up to a couple of months, but maybe a bit more, we'll see. And this should be ready to go once it's all nice and dried. So let's first of all get it out the bag. See what we've got. Going to try and keep as much moisture in the bag as possible. And as you can see, there's not a great deal of moisture in there.
Right, the eagle-eyed amongst you perhaps may have noticed that when I took this meat out of the fridge after 1 day of curing, there was quite a bit of brine associated with the meat, as you can see from this little insert video I put here. And you may be asking the question why this moisture wasn't there when we took the meat out of the bag. And it's a good question. The answer really is that when the moisture is initially taken out of the meat and forms a brine, over the course of around about 14, 15, 16 days that this meat was in the cure, that is reabsorbed by the joint, and it can't really go anywhere else, so it has to be reabsorbed by the joint. Not a problem. What it tells me is that the absorption of the salt has worked. Now what we have to do is get that moisture out, and we're going to do that by the drying process, which will continue now. I just wanted to address that point because I know some of you would have noticed that there was some moisture in there originally, and you may have wanted to know where that's gone. Well, it hasn't dripped out the bag, it's been reabsorbed by the meat. So part of the drying process will be to get rid of that. Okay, on with the video.
Which is helpful. Don't need that bag anymore, that can go. I'll take off a little bit of the moisture, not too much. I want a little bit of moisture left on there so that when I come to put the pepper on it, it sticks. So we're not too concerned about the pepper on the skin, obviously. So, okay, that's good enough for me, I think. It's still a bit damp, but nothing too drastic. All right, the skin is reasonably dry. So first things first, let's put some pepper on this. This is going to give it a nice flavour. That's the sort of thing I'm after. And we'll just give it a tap. Some of that pepper will fall off. There we go. That's the kind of thing we're after. Sort of move it around with my fingers. We'll get as much pepper on there as we can. It should influence the flavour nicely. Great. Okay. Pretty sure that's going to be okay. Lovely. Right, I'm going to just go and get the pepper off my fingers, and then we'll get this in the bag. In fact, I should be all right here. That's fine. My hands aren't that damp. Okay. Right. So these are dry aging bags. If you want to know a little bit more about them, there is some details on the channel about these bags. I will leave a link in the description. You can find out all the information you want. I turn the lip back, and then I'm going to very gently pop this in the bag till it's in all the way. I can get rid of the plate now. Okay, so that's the last I'm going to touch that. That is now in the bag. We got pepper everywhere. Okay, there we go. I have my vacuum machine here, and I'm just going to pull a vacuum on this, and we're going to make sure that we take out as much air as possible. Because this is a suction vacuum machine where it sucks the air out through the lip of the bag, what I tend to do is I use one of these vacuum assist strips, and that's got some ridges in it, just allows the air to pass through here, but it means that when we do actually form a seal, we have to be careful that we make sure it's sealed. We double seal it. We used to sell these on our website. They're great bags. They aren't a vacuum bag as such. They're more of a process bag. They allow moisture to pass through them. They are what I would term the Gore-Tex of food bags. So we'll pull a vacuum. You'll see the air being drawn out of here. It does make a bit of a noise. I'll do it now. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, that went well. I'm going to keep it in there. I'm just going to give it another heat cycle again. So we'll just give it another seal, double seal, cancel that, let it cool down before we open it up. Otherwise, we might just break that seal. I want that to cool down. Just going to open it now. And there we go. There is our seal. And you can see that that seal has gone right the way across that strip, and it's sealed the whole bag. That is now going to dry, and the way that we dry that is by placing it on a rack. And the only reason we put that on a rack is so that air can get all around it underneath as well. And that's just going to sit in the fridge, do its business, and that will dry out. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that I weigh this before it goes in. We'll make a note of the weight on here, and what I'll do is I'll keep a graph. I'll weigh it every week and see how we are progressing with the drying. And what you'll typically see with a lump of meat this size is quite a rapid initial drop in weight over a short period of time. And as time goes on, you will see a gradual decrease in the weight loss. And that is just a symptom of the way that meat dries out. It dries out from the outer surfaces. And what happens there is you get like a case hardening, and that will prevent more moisture being evaporated through the bag. And it just slows the drying down. That's perfectly normal. What we'll do when we get to our target weight, which might take a couple of months, and we're looking for around about a 40% drop in weight. What we'll do when it reaches that target weight is we will place this whole thing in a proper vacuum bag. And what that will do, it will stop this drying out any further, and it will allow the wetter bit in the middle to rehydrate the outer bit on the outside, and it will almost like equalize the drying of this so that the outside bit will be as wet or as dry as the internal bit. And that's really important because it basically means when you slice this on a slicer, all your slices are going to be really quite consistent. So you're not going to get the dry bits on the edge and the wet bits in the middle. And so long as we get down to our target weight and carry out that equalization step by placing this whole thing in a vacuum bag, everything should be absolutely fine. Right, this is ready to go straight into the fridge. I'm going to do that now, and then we'll come and revisit this in a few months' time. And in the meantime, I won't bore you with the details, but I will keep a record of its weight loss as it goes. First of all though, let's stick this on the scales and weigh it. So that is 1,636 grams, 1.636 kilos. I'll get that recorded and we will start the process of drying. Right, this is going to go into the fridge and we'll see it in a few months. Bye. So let me just talk you through this, this drying schedule here. And if you look here, we've got the number of days, although I've made a mistake here, because if you look here, day 1 was the 10th and I put day 2 as the 18th, so I need to change that because that's actually 7 days after. So yeah, I put it onto drying on the 10th of March. The next time I took a weight on it was the 18th of March and it had lost 158 grams in that time. So it was almost 10% of its weight had gone in the first week. And you can see we're trying to lose 30% weight. And you can see now we are very, very close. So we're just shy of it. And we've been nearly about 50 days if you include those 7 days that we didn't add on earlier. You can see here also the weight loss has decreased over time. So we've got time along the bottom axis and we have the weight in grams along the left hand side. And you can see as time marches on, that weight has dropped, but it's not a straight line. It's got a slight bend in it. And that's indicative of what I was explaining. In the early stages of drying, you get a lot of weight loss. And as the days progress, that becomes a lot less. And that's obviously reflected in here, because you can see as we go down here, you know, here we're losing 3 grams a day. Up here we're losing treble that, more than that actually. So yes, that's our graph, and it just demonstrates quite clearly that this is not a linear process, and it does drag on a bit, but it's, you know, this is proper slow food. It takes time to get good stuff, and this is why we do it. Right. That's pretty much the graph explained. Let's take this meat to the next stage and I'll show you how we pop that in the bag. Okay, so this, I weighed it today and it is down to 71.1% of its original weight. Now I said I'm going to get it down to 70%, but you know, for all intents and purposes, that is as good as it's getting. It's losing about 4 grams a day, so it's not a problem. Now I'm going to halt the drying process by popping it into a vacuum bag. Let me take you down onto the workbench and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to be using a roll of vacuum bag, and I'm just going to cut a decent size length like so, and we'll seal the end of this, and then while that's sealing we can pop this inside a little vacuum bag. That's going to stop the drying process, and it's going to allow this meat to equalise, so you don't get the dry bits on the outside, like a dry crust if you like. Okay, it's the 29th of April today. That is now ready to go into the fridge. We're going to forget about this for probably about 3 or 4 weeks now. And as soon as I can start to feel a little bit of softness coming back to the surface, then it will be ready. At the moment, I can press it, but it's quite firm. So there's obviously a crust of hardness on the outside, which we want to rehydrate from the moisture that's within. Right, that's going to go in the fridge and we'll see it in about 3 weeks' time. Right, my friends, this prosciutto now has been in the fridge for about 2 months, equalising. and let's take it out and open it and see what it's like. So come down onto the bench with me and we shall take a look. Right, so this, as you recall, has been in a regular vacuum bag, and it has been doing its thing, equalising to make this sort of uniform in terms of its moisture content. So we'll take it out of this bag. Let's see how it's done. That's its dry aging bag. So we don't need that bag anymore, that can go over there. And let's take it out of the dry aging bags. These are one use, so once they're done, they're done. Ooh, it smells like prosciutto. Oh goodness me, whoa, look at that. We can ditch that bag, that can go in the waste. And I'll tell you what, I might take a cut straight through that. And to do that, I'll get one of my larger knives. It'll be a little bit easier. It should make cutting into this a little bit. There we go. Wow, I don't know about you, but that looks like kind of prosciutto to me. So the first thing that we need to do whenever we're slicing prosciutto is to take the rind off. So let me take a little bit of that rind off, and I'll just cut that through like this. Doesn't matter if we cut through a little bit of the fat when we're doing that. We just don't want that. There we go. It's quite difficult to remove. I want to leave some fat on there. Obviously, when we are slicing our prosciutto, it's nice to have a little bit of fat on there. Let me just release the end of that. That should be a little bit easier. There we go. So, trying to do this as carefully as possible. There we go. We'll release as much of that skin as we can, retaining as much fat as possible. Come on, there we go. Right. Okay, so that's ready to take a slice from. Let us do just that. A nice fine slice. And this is really just for me to see whether or not we actually do have prosciutto. Well, it looks like prosciutto. It smells like prosciutto. Let's see if it tastes like prosciutto. Yeah, man, that is prosciutto. Wow. So you can take an ordinary leg joint of ham and cure it and dry it like a prosciutto. Let's take a few more cuts and let's try that a little bit more. Wow, I am very impressed with that. Now, those of you that know me know that I've got a nice big slicer in the garage, but I much prefer taking these Little slices just like this. It's a bit more artisanal. Wow. Let's give it a go. Okay. Oh, it's not too salty. It's a really nice balance. I'm really surprised with that. It's got a beautiful texture to it as well. It's not too dry. Look, it's got a little bit of give in it as well. Oh wow. That, in my opinion, is a complete and utter success. Now, what I'm going to do with this is cover that over with some cling film, hold it on vacuum, and stick that back in the fridge and take some slices of it whenever I feel the absolute need to do that. But what you can also do with this is, if you have some gold silver boards, and you can buy those online, is you can cut some slices, stick it on gold silver boards, and then you can freeze it. And once you've frozen it, that should last for between 6 to 8 months in a freezer. Absolutely perfect if you want to see this in a few months' time on your plate, and looking just as great as it does now. Right, well, I'm calling that a success. Give it a go, see how you get on with it. It's absolutely a brilliant project, a very, very cost-effective way of creating your own prosciutto, something that you can do in the comfort of your own home. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. You can give it a thumbs up or a thumb up. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you try this at home, let me know how you get on. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourselves, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers now, bye-bye.